Told to report to me at once. I didn't want to, Jim.
Fujifilm X-E5 camera. And today I'm going to tell you all about it.
And that's once right now.
Hi everyone and welcome to Pal to Tech. I'm a little late to the X-E5 party. I'm going to lean a little bit more on the practical side of my experience with the camera. For most of my testing on this camera, I use the brand new 23mm pancake lens. But I also put a lot of other lenses on this thing, from little tiny pancake size lenses to something the size of an Artemis rocket. Fujifilm North America did offer to send this camera and this lens over to me so that I could take a look at it and tell you what I think. They did not sponsor this video. They had no input into its creation, and they were not allowed to see this video until right now when it's been published live for all of you. The X-E5 camera includes the latest 40 megapixel X-Trans CMOS 5 sensor, and it's run by the X Processor 5. This camera is very similar to the X-T50, and it reminds me of the X106, but with obviously the ability to change lenses. Inside the box with the camera is included a nice Fujifilm branded strap, a W126S battery, a dongle so that you can use the camera's USB-C port as a headphone jack. Now there's no charger included, nor even a USB-C cord. I don't know, I think Fujifilm should reconsider this and actually provide the correct USB-C cord out there, just to be sure that the owner is using the correct one. I have a full video on all of the different types of USB cords, and I will leave a link to that video in the description down below. So what was my first impression taking it out of the box? How can I put it in the right words? Right. It's beautiful, elegant, and a premium feel of a work of art. So about that lens. It comes with a manual, a lens cap for the lens, a lens hood, a cap for the lens hood. But here's the thing. Most Fujifilm lenses, when you put a lens cap on, it covers the whole thing. So all of the area in the front is completely protected by the lens cap. As you can see right here, there's still a bit of area that's not protected. Or if you take off the lens hood, even less. Now, I actually think it looks great, but what are your thoughts on that? Should the whole front of the lens be covered and protected, or is this okay? I really enjoyed shooting with this lens. The minimum focus distance is 0.2 meters. The maximum aperture is f2.8. And to be honest with you, I found myself wishing from time to time that it could go a bit wider to f2, say. And that's because I have and use quite often this 23mm prime from Fujifilm. This is a great lens, by the way, but obviously it is a bit taller. Both of these lenses are the exact same price of $499. Meanwhile, back to the camera. I love the focus mode selector switch right here on the left side, as well as the solid door that covers the micro HDMI, USB-C, and microphone ports. Another great feature is the fact that both command dials can also be used as buttons. Now, the fold-out touch LCD screen goes down completely flat, like this, which is wonderful for, looking down street photography positions. But you can also flip it the other direction, and you can use it as a selfie screen. Now, I did notice that the LCD screen seems just a bit more fragile than other flip-out screens on other Fujifilm cameras. On the back of the camera, you have your drive delete, play, auto exposure, and autofocus lock buttons, as well as a push-enabled command dial. And right here is a joystick, menu OK button, and the DISP back button. And there's also a Q button in this odd little place right here. But I never experienced any problems or issues with accidentally pressing it when I was holding onto the camera. Let's talk about this viewfinder. I had some trepidation when I saw this tiny little microscopic electronic viewfinder and the fact it was almost completely flush against the camera. But actually, for me at least, it wasn't too bad because I could put the camera a lot closer to my face. Even though the whole thing is smaller, I'm able to go closer to it than obviously you can with other types of cameras. So that wasn't a problem for me. There is a little secret I want to tell you about with this viewfinder. If you take the camera and you put it all the way to your face and look through the viewfinder, while at the same time press the DISP back button, you can cycle through 3 different types of display. The first is a normal viewfinder display that you would see on any Fujifilm camera. The second one is more like film camera style. Those red numbers, you see them at the bottom right there? They kind of remind me of what you might see on an original Timex digital watch from 1978. But there's more. Have a look at this right here. That is an analog exposure indicator right there, straight out of film, repurposed for the digital age. You remember that little needle thingy? And if it was lined up right in the middle, you had proper exposure. You don't remember? You never saw that before? That's what it does. And the third and final type of display is just a simple screen with no indicators at all. On the top right, there's a custom button right here, an exposure compensation dial, your on-off switch, as well as a shutter speed dial. The feel of these dials is wonderful. Here's what they sound like. Continuing, right here is a hot shoe mount with a couple of microphones in front of it, and right next to it is the newly designed film simulation dial. Watch while I'm rotating the film simulation dial. You see right here, it is listing what they are. Now C means that you are assigning another custom button somewhere else on the camera. And continuing on the dial, there are 3 more settings: FS1, FS2, and FS3. FS, film simulation. So you go right into the menu, into film simulation dial setting. For example, if you go into FS2, you can either assign FS2 a film simulation, just pick one and you're good to go, or you can assign it a recipe. Turn it on. The minute you do that, boom, it drops you into a recipe menu. You see that? You can go ahead and set your recipe. Now, the great thing about this is that you can turn the camera off, go away for 3 years, come back, turn it back on, and it will be waiting for you. And the weird thing about it is when you turn it off here, say you want to turn it off and then just go with a film simulation assigned to it, if you go back into it, turn it back on, your settings are still there. While I feel this new design is actually better, I did run into a couple of issues. The first was that every time I looked down, I would have trouble actually being able to read it. And because I did notice that this dial is a bit loose, suppose you're only shooting in JPEG and it accidentally gets tripped from Velvia to Acros. You see what I'm saying? But the much bigger deal about the film simulation dial is where it's located. It looks stunning from a design standpoint, but I look at this area right here on the camera as premium New York 5th Avenue real estate. And I found myself getting frustrated a number of times because this was not an ISO dial or a dial that I could have customized. The other issue is that when I assign, say, the film simulation to a swipe gesture or a custom button, it's so much easier to see the film simulation on the LCD screen. So, it's practically the same amount of speed. I hit a button, boom, I can see it, it's clear. I don't have this tiny little window, which it's elegant, looks good, but from a practical standpoint and being that I'm used to the XT line, it just wasn't for me. Moving to the front of the camera, there's another push-in command dial. It has just the perfect amount of resistance when you're pressing it in. And next to it is a combination control lever and customizable button. This thing is actually a smart idea. It has 5 custom things that you can program on this one tiny little thing, which is great because it saves space. You don't have a lot of space. Awesome design choice. However, it took me a few days to get the whole move it short, then long kind of thing. Let me show you. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and you see it goes, a short or a longer. And at first I thought it's like the position, like I had to just get like a toothpick and move it just a little bit, and that's 1. on, and then I press it all the way in. And no, that's not how it is. It has to do with how long you hold it over. And as you can see, it's button, and then these are the two this way, these are the two that way. And something to remember if you've never used this lever before, okay? When it has the short indicator, you see that right here, you're literally going like this. Boom, like that. It's short in terms of time, not in terms of distance you're moving it. Does that make sense? When it's long, what you actually do is you push it all the way to the end and you hold it there for like a second or two, and then it will apply the setting that you've put in here. Now, I was confused when I first started setting this up, and I'm curious what you think, okay? When I am looking at this menu, Fujifilm is doing it as if you were looking at it from the front of the camera. I'm looking at it this way, and so when I'm setting this one, I'm just thinking I'm moving the lever this way. They have a little diagram. You need an electron microscope to see the tiny little green arrow thingy right here. So again, the direction that these arrows are pointing for the ones that you're setting would be as if you're looking at the camera from the front. And finally, on the bottom of the camera, the tripod mount is far enough away from the battery cover so that you can change the battery out if the camera is attached to a tripod, at least with most mounts. The battery area is also where you store your SD card. The camera takes a single SD card, but it uses the faster UHS-2 SD cards, which is great. There's also a removable portion of the battery cover, you see that right here, in case you need to use a permanent AC battery and run the electrical wire through there. Below the speaker, the Bluetooth button, there's no way to assign any custom function to it. Come on, Fuji, firmware update. That would be really helpful. Because this camera allows you to change lenses, unlike the X100VI, but similar to the X-T50, the grip ergonomics is a little bit more important. When you have certain lenses on this camera, if you're out and about, after a while, you're gonna feel it. I'm just saying, you're gonna feel it. That's the first thing. The second thing is that when you're holding the camera, just like this in one hand, trying to adjust these dials right here, because if you try and do that, you're gonna drop the camera. There's a lens weight limit to this, which I haven't figured out yet. It's like the point of no return, where the lens is just too heavy for this camera, I think. This might be a problem. However, the 55 to 200, not too bad. Even though it protrudes out further, it's not as heavy, and this is not bad. You're good with this lens. Say you put on the 16 to 55, the original, too heavy, in my opinion. And there's no problem with the 18 to 55 millimeter lens. It works just fine. But this can be an issue for people, because if they have, say, this command dial assigned, oh, I don't know, as the ISO dial, you want to be able to use one hand and quickly do it. So just something to think about. Now, as small and compact as it is, this camera also includes a 5-axis IBIS system, which, according to Fuji, provides up to 7 stops of image stabilization. These are the straight out of camera raw files. For all of these tests, I handheld the camera, just kind of like this. I used the 18 to 55 millimeter. It does have built-in OIS on it, so keep that in mind. Here we are at 1/30th of a second, zoomed in at 100%. Looks good. That's what we'd probably expect. Next, 1/15th of a second. Still looks good. Here we are at 1/8th of a second. If I zoom in a little bit more, we are now at 200%. You see a little bit of softness, but it's not too bad. Let's go to the next one. Look at this, 1/6th of a second, okay? We are zoomed in at 200%. Half a second, yeah, definitely some softness, okay? But still passable if you had to. Now, when you get to 1 second, it all just goes, okay, it's gone. I was zoomed in all the way with this lens, about 55 millimeters. But again, look at this, 1/6th of a second, 100%, going to 200%, going to 300%, handheld, 1/6th of a second. Let's talk about image quality. I was very happy with the image quality using the 23 millimeter pancake lens. The only issue I had was that f2.8 limitation. Here, for example, is f2.8, and you can see the type of background that you would get. This is a straight out of camera JPEG. You're not going to have that level of background isolation you'd get at f2 or wider. However, it looks very pleasing. And something else to keep in mind is that if you do need to raise your ISO a bit, it's not the end of the world. This camera has very, very good high ISO, low noise. This is a straight out of camera RAW file, and it's ISO 2500, zoomed into 100. This looks very good. Going into 200%, you can start to see a little bit of that noise. And as you can see, that 40 megapixel sensor really allows for a lot of cropping flexibility. Now, going all the way up to ISO 12800, which is the highest native ISO on the camera. I'm using the RAW file right here, and I'm zoomed in 100%. Obviously, you can see some noise, no question about it. Interestingly though, let me show you the JPEG. First, in the RAW file, I'll zoom in to 300%. That's pretty bad. But here's the JPEG. Just looks a lot better. Natively out of the camera, 12,800. It's not great, but I've seen worse. Here's another 12,800 straight out of the camera RAW file, zoomed in 100%. Now, it's a blurry shot, guilty as charged, and even in the low light areas, it still looks quite acceptable. I mean, for the highest possible native ISO. Now, to be clear, the non-native ISO values, the really high ones, okay, that go beyond 12,800, they're pretty bad. I mean, have a look at this one right here, 25,600. The difference, obviously, it's not a native ISO. It is post-processed once you take the shot, okay, in the camera. I mean, you may as well just toss the image. But, you know, if you have no choice. This is ISO 640, zoomed in at 100% right here. If I jump to 200%, still looks great. Here we are, 400%. You see a little bit way off in the background. If you have not used a 40 megapixel sensor before, you're in for a real treat. You can crop in very closely. There's also the digital teleconverter feature. It's a whole other video, but that works awesome on this camera as well. Now I've got a RAW file here. I'm going to zoom in to just show you how far you can zoom in. I will warn you, there is a spider. Okay, some people get a little freaked out by that. So I am zooming into a spider. You've been warned, okay? Right now we are all the way back. Let's go to 100%. Boom, there's 100% right there, but I can keep going. Let's go to 200% and it looks great. You could crop it at 200%. 300%, that's maybe too much. And you see how far back I was. ISO 200, zooming in, 100%, 200%, 300%. In terms of dynamic range, with the 40 megapixel sensor, the RAW files, you could definitely pull up those shadows and bring down those highlights. Let me show you. So here we're working from a RAW file. And as you can see, if I zoom in, you've got some loss of detail, but probably not clipped. Let's bring down the highlights and see what we can recover. There you go, a little bit there. You see that? So we went from this to this. Let's take a look at the shadows now. Here is a straight out of camera RAW file, 23mm f2.8. Let's bring up the shadows. Have a look at that. That's not bad. Here we are zoomed in at 100, before, after, before, after. Of course, you can bring the exposure up too, see what you can get. Highlights mixed in. For example, if you go down here, you got some loss of detail, but bring down those highlights. Look at that. You see that? It went from this to this. Now, if you tried these adjustments on the JPEG out of camera, you would not see this drastic of a result. Now, the camera does have this weird HDR feature where it auto HDRs itself, so to speak. Basically, you're doing in camera what I just did here. And you get a JPEG that's been adjusted for the dynamic range to kind of bring up those shadows and pull down those highlights. I mean, you just have to experiment around with it. I think it's always better to edit in post-production because you can control what areas you want to bring up and all of that kind of stuff. Let's move on. So now taking a look at the burst rates that you can get with this camera, the rate that you'll get will depend on what shutter speed that you select. With mechanical shutter, the most you're going to get is 8 frames a second. However, go into your menu, shutter type, switch it to electronic, and now you can choose from the others. Keep in mind that there is a crop factor. You see that right there, 1.29 times crop, but you will get the higher burst rate. Keep in mind that electronic shutter does have some limitations, and yes, I have a whole video on that as well. Now, in terms of buffer testing and how well the camera does write out speeds, I ran out of time and I could not test all of that as much as I wanted. But I will just tell you, I think it handled about the same as the X-T50. Of course, a lot of this will depend on the size of your image, obviously, but the biggest thing is whether or not you're shooting RAW and JPEG, and even bigger is the compression of the RAW file. You see these three right here. The difference in size is pretty big of each image. In terms of resolution and the fact that you have a 40 megapixel sensor, on the low end, you can choose 2592 by 2592, going all the way up to maximum resolution of 7728 by 5152. Let's now talk about autofocus with this camera for stills. I found that face-eye autofocus in AFC mode on this camera with the 23mm pancake lens to work very well, coupled with making sure that I had my AFC settings exactly matching the situation I was shooting. For stills, I found it to be snappy and it nailed most of the shots. It does start to have trouble with subjects going right toward the camera at a high rate of speed or in lower contrast scenes with low light. Overall, I would say the autofocus on this camera is on par with the X-T50 for sure. Now, with regard to subject detection, that was sort of a mixed bag. Animal detection was okay. I didn't think it was that great, but it wasn't horrible either. The bottom line with a camera like this, you're not going to use it for fast action sports photography. You're not going to want to use it for real low light, fast action wildlife photography. But for street, portraits, nature, travel, the autofocus system combined with the proper AFC settings that you put in here, knowing all of them and how to use them, I think is great. Autofocus on video is different, and we need to talk about that. But before we do, let's just talk about features you can expect with video on this camera. It will allow you to shoot video footage all the way up to 6.2K 16:9 at 30 frames per second, up to a maximum bitrate of 200 megabits per second. Now you've got all of the other usual 4K options that you see in the other Fujifilm cameras, such as 4K, 4K HQ, regular 4K. You also have HD, 1080, of course, with all of those options. If you're shooting in 4K, the camera will allow you to shoot up to 60 frames a second. But you're gonna take a hit on your battery life. One thing that I found kind of odd in looking through the bit rates that you can choose, okay, your maximum is 200. Why anyone would want to drop down to 8 megabits per second is beyond me. It's kind of funny to see it in there. You also have a 25 and a 50. You know, I'm not quite sure the decision tree that would, compel someone to go, wait a second, do I want 25? Or 50. I've got an entire video on how to understand all this, and I'll leave a link down in the description below. If you output via HDMI with this camera, you can go right into a Blackmagic or Atomos monitor, and we're talking raw footage here. With regard to this pancake lens and shooting video, the autofocus with this lens in certain AFC settings was considerably slower than I would have liked. And by far, it always is faster focusing in on the subjects farther away. Have a look at this right here. It's going from far away to close up that it slows down. If I was shooting and needing autofocus with this lens, okay? I don't believe I would use this combo for video. Your results may vary. Now, the other thing was the sound. I love the sound of the aperture ring, but when you're shooting video and you have two microphones right here, the camera is hunting, trying to acquire focus. Listen to what it sounds like. And if you're shooting in a quiet location, it may require you to use the microphone port and have an off-camera mic just so you don't pick that up. I thought that image stabilization for video was excellent on this camera. And here you can see the difference, obviously, with having stabilization turned on using the camera's IBIS. And I also noticed that digital image stabilization performed better on this camera. I was surprised by that. I would use it on this camera. IS mode boost, I found worked very well. Be sure you know what you're doing with that one. I've talked about it a million times. I'll cover it in the setup video. Let's move on. Finally, I'd like to discuss battery life. The X-E5, like other cameras with the same kind of similar size and features, they use the NPW126S battery. These are the smaller, older Fujifilm batteries, and then Fujifilm came out with the larger, longer-lasting NPW235. However, specifically on the X-E5 camera, I noticed that it went through these batteries a lot faster than any other camera I've ever tested with Fujifilm. Now, when I do testing and I'm checking out cameras for teaching for these videos, I put them through the ringer, okay? Let me cool you off. Keep that in mind that I am probably a bigger power draw on the camera, so to speak. Now, one of the shooting events that I took this camera to was downtown Atlanta for 4 hot days in the street, Dragon Con, all right? And it went through batteries considerably. The biggest draw by far, putting it in 4K 60 frames a second or 6.2K 30 frames a second. However, when shooting video, okay, there are other things that can cause issue. For example, right here, I have both IBIS and IS mode boost on. Both of those are going to make the camera work harder. Autofocus. I noticed that with area, it did go through the batteries a bit more. If your tracking sensitivity is on 0, the quick, so it's just constantly, squirrel, it's doing that, you're going to go through batteries a lot faster. And I actually think that Fujifilm is going to be coming up against kind of a barrier pretty soon. These cameras are getting more and more complex with IBIS, autofocus, things like that. Battery has stayed the same, and they're just going to have to be made a little bit bigger. I mean, I would far rather have the camera a little bit bigger and just have the battery last longer. That's a priority for me, but what do you think about battery life? Definitely check out what other reviewers are saying about this camera. There's a small part of me that actually doesn't like making camera review videos. There's always folks out there who either just got the camera that you're talking about, or they're really excited and are planning on getting one, right? And so when you notice a problem, an issue, something that you feel you must shed a little bit of light on, and it could be a significant problem or maybe nothing, there's a sting that happens when you see someone on YouTube, a reviewer, whatever, complain about a feature in a camera that you just got or that you're excited using. I know there are some viewers that take what I say seriously, and that makes me take the process of this extremely seriously. So that is not going to change. But I want to tell you 2 quick things. First, definitely check out what other reviewers are saying about this camera. If 9 out of 10 of them are saying the battery life is great, then you know that your Uncle Pal to Tech is drinking too much coffee or whatever. So do that. Now, secondly, this is a beautiful and has a look and feel to it that's perfect for certain types of photographers that will absolutely fall in love with it. It's very well built, and coupled with the 23mm pancake lens, it makes a great kit, but it's just not my preference. Okay, this is more me. Missing the battery door, scratches, dings, dents, broken HDMI. It's a tool. If you like the X106 and you like that style, this is an X106, but you can change out the lenses, which is awesome. The X-E5 is almost identical to the X-T50. I would strongly recommend that you look at review videos of both cameras. If you have an extra $200 in your budget, as of the date of this video, I would recommend that you check out the X-T5. And yes, the X-E5 is definitely worth the consideration if you fall into the category of wanting a premium build, rangefinder style compact camera with a lot of great features. Just be sure to pick up an extra battery. Well, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you found the video helpful, or at least entertaining. And if you did, be sure to give it the like and subscribe. And I will see you in a new video very soon. Take care. My head is spinning from all this. By the way, those concert tickets, those are real. Really wanna see